to please bring together your leadership teams and run through this set of activities to ensure that your organizations are as secure as they need to be before the holiday weekend. First, update and patch all software. We continuously see attackers compromising organizations based on vulnerabilities that are known for which patches are available. Second, ensure that individuals have strong passwords in place, and indeed for key personnel, encourage them to change their passwords now. Third, implement multi-factor authentication, particularly for key personnel and IT staff. Multi-factor authentication is something more than a password. It could be a biometric, like a fingerprint. It could be a code that comes off software. Last week, President Biden hosted key executives from technology companies as part of his efforts to really secure America online. And a number of those executives pointed to multi-factor authentication as preventing 80 to 90% of cyber attacks. Indeed, because it is such a helpful way to address cyber vulnerabilities, it's one of the 5 things President Biden mandated be rolled out across the federal government quickly as part of his executive order in May. Fourth, such a helpful review your incident response plan and do a drill against it to ensure that if a compromise occurs, you're ready to react and respond quickly. And finally, ensure that you have up-to-date backups and that they're segregated from a network so that they're not accessible to an attacker. There are a couple of other good practices to do. Security teams should proactively hunt on a network. It's kind of like a digital version of walking the beat. Look for any initial signs of compromise or anything unusual on a network. And everyone should be extra vigilant for phishing emails and clicking on links that may be new or something that looks unusual. I want to repeat that we have no information about any specific threats or attacks, so the purpose of this is really to raise awareness before a holiday weekend, given the history of increased criminal cyber activity during holiday weekends. As always, CISA, FBI, and other U.S. government partners are positioned to support any organization that needs it. Please visit stopransomware.gov and follow the practices that you see. Taking a step back for a moment, the Biden administration is committed to addressing cyber threats to the country. And indeed, as I mentioned last week, President Biden hosted executives from technology companies, education firms, critical infrastructure, and others to focus on addressing the root causes of cyber. The technology companies in particular announced a set of commitments online to address some of the root causes of technology vulnerabilities and improve security of their products. Thank you. Wishing you a safe and enjoyable holiday weekend.
It's been more than 2 months since the President's meeting with President Putin. Have the Russians done anything to crack down on ransomware attackers?
Thank you for the question. The discussions with the Russians continue. As President Biden noted, he's looking for action with regard to addressing cyber activity, and we continue to see, to look for that. That being said, we also need to look at our own activity, and it's the reason for this today, to ensure that we're doing everything we can to lock our digital doors and ensure that our networks and our organizations are as safe as they need to be online.
Jackie? Have you guys determined who is responsible for the attack on the State Department a couple of weeks ago?
I won't address specific incidents here. We're certainly looking at that, and we're also focused on, as I noted, the rollout of the 5 particular technologies across the federal government so we can confidently reduce the risk of such continued attacks. Those are on a tight timeline. So far, both CISA and Commerce's NIST have met every single timeline, and those key technologies are scheduled to be rolled out within 6 months of the President's executive order last May. So we're really tracking October and November to ensure that we've modernized our defenses across the federal government.
Do you believe that the patches that need to have been done have happened across agencies?
That work continues. As I noted in a prior discussion, there's a great deal of work to modernize our federal networks. They were not where they needed to be. And that's one of the reasons that the President mandated such aggressive, we believe achievable, but aggressive steps to bring them up to where they need to be to meet the level the attackers focus on those networks.
Jen?
Some of my colleagues at Bloomberg reported today about identifying some of the Chinese state-sponsored hackers who are behind an alleged NSA, co-opting an alleged NSA backdoor in products from Juniper Networks, which has obviously been known about for quite a few years. What are the administration's policies around the use of backdoors, and what are the guidelines, if any, about NSA's ability to insert backdoors into U.S. tech companies' products?
As you know, that's been as you noted, that's been an old story that's been reported, and I think we've continuously noted that there isn't substantiation for it. Focusing on supply chain for a moment, the supply chain and the need to ensure that software is as secure as possible is something that's absolutely a priority of this administration. I think you saw in the President's executive order, he mandated putting in place certain steps to ensure secure supply chains for products, and those are rolling out. Indeed, as well, I think you saw several of the announcements that came out of the summit last week. So we're absolutely committed to working with technology companies to ensure that their products are as secure as needed to face the attacks of today.
Do Monica, and then right in the back, and then we'll have to wrap it up.
So there was a spike in ransomware attacks earlier in the summer that seems to have slowed down slightly. To what do you attribute that? And then you did mention there wasn't something specific that caused you to come and bring out this warning. But in terms of Labor Day, is there anything different about it that you would like to highlight, given we haven't seen these kinds of warnings before the 4th of July or anything else more recently?
Two really good questions. First, we've noted the decrease in ransomware. And we think it's an important step in reducing the risk to Americans. There could be a host of reasons for it, so we're noting that trend, and we hope that that trend continues. And with regard to the change and why we're here today, I think it reflects the administration's focus on cyber threats and the recognition that we play a role in all of that. Yes, there are attackers, but they're leveraging vulnerabilities across the networks that we have. We continue to see successful attacks occurring against vulnerabilities for which there are patches. So we want to use the opportunity of this press room and the attention that it gets to ask Americans, to ask organizations to do the steps they need to do to be safe online, even as the government focuses on its efforts. And you've heard our counter-ransomware strategy, working with countries around the world, focusing on the illicit use of cryptocurrency, and pursuing and disrupting ransomware networks around the world. So this really represents the focus we're putting on this issue and the need and the highlight we're saying to Americans to do what they need to do in partnership with the government to be safe online.
Last one in the
If you're a
back.
small company just trying to protect yourself when it comes to ransomware attacks, what is the weakest link attackers will try to exploit? Just a small company, mom and pop shop, you're worried about getting an attack.
Really great question. I would say two things. One is make sure your leadership and IT staff have deployed multi-factor authentication, have a strong password.
Password.
Really a strong password. And then, of course, patching the software that's most important.
Thank you.
Go ahead, last one.
I wanted to ask what you and your team are doing heading into the weekend, whether it's here at the White House through NSC or at CISA. Do you have certain staff on call this weekend? Do you have certain preparations that you're making on your end in addition to the advice you're giving to the public?
Great question. So first, we pulled together the intelligence community to ensure that we were tracking any and all threats and to ensure that they are highly alert for anything related to that. Second, we of course brought together agencies across the government, including key ones like FBI and CISA, to ensure that they were fully postured and fully prepared to be on staff and noting any early signs of any incidents so we could rapidly jump on them and respond to them. And finally is this, calling on Americans, organizations to do the steps they need to do to be as safe as possible in advance of what may be an increased threat, as we've seen in history for the reasons I noted during the holiday weekend.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We will
Be well.
see you again, I'm certain.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you for taking the time. Okay. A couple things for you at the top. Obviously, the President spoke to our ongoing work to help the people in the Gulf Coast and also in the Northeast and also out west as we're going through a range of natural disasters across the country. I just wanted to call out a few things. In Louisiana, disaster survivor assistance teams arrived today to support cooling stations in the city of New Orleans and St. John the Baptist Parish, where heat advisories are in effect and many residents remain without power. FEMA also announced today a new policy policy this morning to reduce barriers that have long prevented many disaster survivors, particularly Black Americans, from receiving disaster assistance by expanding the types of legal documentation for homeowners and renters to prove ownership or occupancy. This has been a big barrier in the past, and it was something we worked hard to address proactively. Also, finally, to help disaster survivors, and I've talked about this a bit, but just to give you an update, Register for Federal Assistance mobile emergency response support assets are deployed to support Louisiana and Mississippi. Now, as of today, roughly 50,000 households in Louisiana have already received a one-time payment of $500 from FEMA to support critical needs. And as the President noted, FEMA has awarded more than $77 million to help disaster survivors. Also this week, as part of our efforts to engage with communities that are hesitant about COVID-19 vaccines, White House Senior Policy Advisor for COVID-19 Equity, Dr. Cameron Webb, has held community confidence visits to encourage vaccinations in cities across the South, including Columbia, Jacksonville, Columbus, and Mobile. The community confidence visits aim to take a systematic approach to community conversations about COVID-19 and the vaccines that focus on the interrelatedness between COVID-19 and long-standing social determinants of health, including housing, education, mental health, and food insecurity. We've been really encouraged by how receptive people have been to these conversations, and more broadly encouraged that more people continue to get vaccinated, including nearly 2 million in the past 2 days, people in the past 2 days, a strong start to the month. And I know there's a COVID briefing that starts in about 40 minutes, and you can learn more there. Go ahead, Josh.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jen. Two subject areas, both legal. With regard to the Texas abortion law, President Biden has a Supreme Court commission with a report due by October 6th. Did the President or anyone in the administration reach out to members of the commission in the wake of what happened? And does the President have any new thoughts on the structure of the court?
Well, first, I would say you're correct that there is an ongoing work that the Court Commission is doing. Their work is, and just to remind you all of what their focus is, there's about 30 members of this Court Commission. They're from diverse backgrounds and diverse views, and they're going to examine a range of questions about the future of the court, including term limits, including court expansion, and in addition, and several additional topics. We have not to my awareness, have we reached out to the Commission. It's important they do their work on the timeline that was designated, and that they examine from a broad and diverse viewpoint all of these questions. But the President looks forward to reviewing their work when it's completed.
And the President doesn't have any new thoughts on the structure of the court?
He's waiting for the conclusion of this report, looks forward to reviewing it, seeing where they come out.
And then secondly, on the Purdue Pharma bankruptcy, does the administration believe the settlement gave sufficient justice to the victims of the opioid crisis?
It's a great question, Josh. I want to speak to our team and see if we can get you a more specific comment on that. Go ahead.
On the Texas law, what avenues are available to you in the short term for reacting to this law? We saw the President's statement directed the Gender Policy Council to do some things. What do you envision happening here?
Well, Steve, that's exactly what the President directed his team to look into, to be able to answer that question. Obviously, we're about 12 hours or less than that since this ruling. And what the President made clear in his statement this morning is that the impact of last night's decision should be immediate and requires an immediate process. So yes, he's asked the Gender Policy Council because he feels it's important for there to be a point of contact, or a point person, I should say, at a senior level in the White House. But most importantly, he's also directed them to work with the legal team here at the White House, the Department of Justice, the Department of Health and Human Services, to determine what, if any, steps can be taken here to protect a woman's right to choose and access to health care for women in Texas.
Were you surprised by this ruling?
We can never predict rulings, I will say, Steve. We certainly know the makeup of the court, but again, we try to stay out of the business of making predictions.
One thing on Afghanistan, do you see any possibility for a limited easing of the freeze in Afghan assets to prevent the collapse of that country's banking sector?
Well, I would say first, let me give you just kind of an overview of kind of what some of the considerations and good questions are. Yeah.
Right?
Yes, but no one should assess that we are currently considering an easing of sanctions on the Taliban. That is not under that is not actively being discussed or pursued. We've not reduced sanctions pressure on the Taliban leaders or the significant restrictions on their access to the international financial system. And we will judge, and we want to make this very clear. We are going to judge the Taliban by their actions, and we will stay in close coordination with the international community on any steps that we take moving forward. Now, at the same time, we also want to ensure there is assistance to the Afghan people, humanitarian assistance and other assistance to keep them afloat and make sure they have, we provide that from the international community at this point in time. So there have been steps that have been taken in court, including issuing an OFAC license that allows this humanitarian assistance to go through. That, of course, is not through the Taliban. That is through outside organizations, and that's something we're working to be big contributors to. Go ahead, Jeff.
Back to the commission for 1 second. The president obviously served for a long time as chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He's been in this town longer than most anyone. What is he looking for from a commission to offer him that he would not have for this? And what do you say to critics who say he's simply punting this to them to avoid making a yes or no decision if he thinks the court should or should not be expanded?
Well, I would say to critics, or we would say to critics, yes, the president has a long history working on judicial issues as the former chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and he takes the role of institutions in our nation's history, including the Supreme Court, quite seriously. That's one of the reasons why this court was put together and constructed in the way it was. I mean, this commission, I should say, was put together and constructed in the way it was, which is with a diverse set of viewpoints, a diverse set of expertise, and he asked them to look at a broad set of questions, wanted to give them time to do that work and come out of that with some viewpoints, but he wants to leave them space to do exactly that. And I think the fact that he named a commission with a diverse set of viewpoints reflects his strong commitment to preserving institutions, but also taking a fresh look at things that need to change if needed.
Is he misleading supporters of expanding the court, though, by allowing this commission to do its work? I mean, the reality is this would take a legislative change. It's something he couldn't change on his own. Why doesn't he just come out and say how difficult this would be?
Well, I think it's clear it's difficult, but the president's view on the expansion of courts has not changed. He also wants this group, this commission, to take a close look at a range of issues, not just court expansion, which is an important question for them to examine, but term limits and a range of questions that the commission is looking at. I will also note, though, Jeff, that in the president's statement today, he also made very clear and in pretty strong terms his viewpoints on the ruling of the Supreme Court in this case. And rulings like that do raise concerns, not just for the president, but for people out there in the country about how the court is operating. And I'll just note what he said, for the majority to do this without a hearing, without the benefit of an opinion from a court below, and without due consideration of the issues, insults the rule of law and rights of all Americans to seek redress from our courts. That is, of course, of concern, not just to him, but it should be to all Americans who watched the ruling this morning.
On Afghanistan, really quickly, if I can, are there any updates on the 100 to 200 American citizens who were in the country or are still in the country? Do you believe they still are, or what's the latest on the diplomatic mission?
Well, I know my colleague at the State Department is briefing right about now and will give a more in-depth update on this. But what he said yesterday, and I will just echo, is it is closer to 100. We are in close touch from the State Department, from our diplomatic officials, with all of these individuals, working in close coordination with them to determine how they can leave the country, if they've left the country. There have been reports, as I think many of you have seen or reported yourself, about charter flights. If I can just speak to that for a moment, because I know it's been a popular question. There have been some confusion about this. We do not have personnel on the ground, nor do we have air assets in the country, and we don't control the airspace. So anyone who's suggesting we are preventing these flights, that's not accurate. We couldn't prevent a charter flight from taking off. But what is important for people to understand is where we have some concern, and that is the fact that we do not have reliable means to confirm the basic details of charter flights, including who may be organizing them, the number of American citizens and other priorities groups on board, the accuracy of the rest of the manifest and where the plane may land, what security protocols they're taking into place. So just to kind of give you an example here, these charter flights flights are landing on U.S. military bases. And we have to be very careful, and I think it's understandable we have concern about flights where we don't have that level of information and understanding about the manifests, what the protocols are that are underway. There's also a question, there continue to be active ISIS-K threats. And there's also a question of where these flights go, where they land. We know ISIS-K has a keen interest in attacks against aviation targets and our personnel on the ground in our in our military bases, and these are among the risks that we take into account. Go ahead.
Just a few here. Most of the Texas-related questions have been asked. We're curious, what advice would the president give to a woman in Texas right now who wants or needs to get an abortion?
What the president would convey to any woman who is trying to get an abortion, seek an abortion, be able to employ her constitutional right to seek health care and health care that is enshrined and allowed by federal law. What he would convey to them, I don't think he's going to be giving medical advice. That's not the role of any president. He would say, but I would say he would convey to them, I have asked my team,
little jabs at Trump,
to use every lever at their disposal to ensure you have this right, to ensure you have access, to ensure that you can have the ability to seek medical care in the way that every woman should have the right to across the country. And he has made that a priority.
And this request of DOJ and HHS for what more can we do? Is the understanding or the expectation that they will actually come back with specific ideas, or is it possible that they determine there really isn't much beyond making sure somebody takes this to the Supreme Court? Because the federal government can't be subject to a civil suit in Texas. But there are other things potentially the federal government would be able to do?
The president has every hope, expectation that the leaders of agencies across the government who have capacity will seek every way they can, every means they can to protect a woman's right to choose in Texas. I can't preview for you. I don't know yet what they will come back with. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. On the Texas law, has the president been in touch with Speaker Pelosi and Majority Leader Schumer in the past 2 days about their efforts to pass legislation protecting abortion rights?
He does intend to talk with them about this. I can't tell you exactly when that will be, but he has every intention to do that. I will note that Speaker Pelosi also put out a statement about the intention to bring up the codification of Roe up for a vote, which is something the president certainly supports and would be eager to sign into law.
One more. Does the administration have a message for industry and private businesses that have operations in Texas? Would the president and the White House support a boycott of sorts against Texas?
That's not a call we're making from here. What our effort and what the focus of the federal government is to look for every resource, every lever at our disposal to ensure women in Texas have the ability to seek health care.
Following up on the Texas law, why does the president support abortion when his own Catholic faith teaches abortion is morally wrong?
Well, he believes that it's a woman's right, it's a woman's body, and it's her choice.
Why does the president, who does he believe then should look out for the unborn child?
He believes that it's up to a woman to make those decisions, and up to a woman to make those decisions with her doctor. I know you've never faced those choices, nor have you ever been pregnant, but for women out there who have faced those choices, this is an incredibly difficult thing. The president believes their rights should be respected.
How about forcing the jab on us?
I think we have to move on. You've had plenty of time today.
You're a dusty bitch.
Green card holders and SIV applicants remain in Afghanistan.
Let me give you, let me give you first, and I'll get to your question, but it reminds me I wanted to give you guys an update on one piece that was asked yesterday, which is how many people have come into the country. And this is something that DHS will be providing regular updates on, but just to give you an understanding of the breakdown, and then I will come back to your question, Jackie, I promise. First, between August 17th and August 31st, of the breakdown of people who have come into the country, 107 people have arrived in the United States as a part of Operation Allies Welcome. 4,446 are U.S. citizens, 14% of them. 2,785, or 9%, are U.S. lawful permanent residents. 23,876, or 77%, this is the statistic I gave yesterday, which I then later butchered in the briefing, are other Afghans at risk, including SIV and other visa holders, SIV applicants, P1 and P2 referrals, and others. Note that this group includes a small number of third country nationals that were also evacuated and processed. We will give updates on that. That's obviously the data as of just a couple of days ago. In terms of your question, which is a very good one, Jackie, in terms of how many people are in the country now, there are people who are eligible. We may not even know they're eligible yet, right? It is very hard to define those numbers. That is something that certainly the State Department, in coordination with the Department of Homeland Security, are going to be assessing what we think the population is and how we can work with this population to ensure that we help individuals who want to leave and want to depart the country to depart. Some of those people may be eligible for a range of our programs, SIV programs, P1, P2 programs. Some of them may not, but they still may want to depart the country. Now, as I noted yesterday, and I've noted several times, everybody who wants to leave Afghanistan and come to the United States will not be able to and will not be eligible. And we don't want to set the expectation that will be the case, but what we want to do is try to assess and try to do extensive outreach through diplomatic channels to see how many people there are, what programs they might be eligible for.
Thank you. And then I wanted to get to the Taliban and questions of whether it's keeping its promise for amnesty. There was some reporting from the BBC, some color from that story. Since the Taliban came to power, one man said they haven't stopped killing. A few days ago, this person said they killed 12 members of special forces in Kandahar, 3 soldiers in Jalalabad as well. The Taliban took them out of their homes and shot them. Given this kind of reporting that we're hearing, is it possible that our reliance on the Taliban to keep their word in terms of our evacuation is misplaced for going back on things like the amnesty promise?
Well, first, I don't have any confirmation of those details. I'm not questioning the BBC's reporting. I just don't have any confirmation of them from the U.S. government. I would certainly point you to the Department of Defense and others who might have additional details. But what I would note here, Jackie, is no one is saying from the federal government, no one, the President, the Secretary of Defense, no one from the intelligence community, that the Taliban are good actors, right? We are not saying that. That is one of the reasons we are being so clear that we are not rushing to recognition. We will be watching clearly. We have a range of leverage at our disposal, including access to the global marketplace. And of course, we will be assessing. It's of course based on how they treat individuals in the country, how they treat women, whether they let people who want to leave the country leave. All of those are factors that we will be assessing, but I don't have any confirmation of that specific reporting. Go ahead.
Jen, yesterday you said you were going to check on the specifics, so just to be clear, the President does support the Women's Health Protection Act?
We are looking at a range of options in Congress, including the Women's Health Protection Act, but I don't have an assessment at this point in time about that piece of legislation.
And will there be a point person for this whole government approach, like with voting rights or with immigration? And if not, why not?
The President conveyed clearly in his statement he'd asked the Gender Policy Council co-chairs to oversee this effort.
And what's the timeline on that policy council?
I'm not.
When will they have a deadline to get back to him, or when they may produce a report?
Well, I wouldn't look at it as producing a report. They are going to be coordinating all of the leverage and all of the efforts and policy options across the government. And the President wants them to act as quickly as possible. So it's not a means of 100 days and then we'll get a report. It's let's see what our options are and let's act on them. Go ahead.
If I could just try to drill down on that. The President did say an immediate response is required. I know you said you're not in a position to preview any, but what does the White House see as a federal responsibility here? I mean, you're talking about the possibility of involving the Justice Department, HHS. In Oklahoma, there are clinics that are saying, okay, we are offering the service, come here. Is that something that the federal government can do? Provide transportation for women outside the state of Texas?
These are all great questions, and I would note that it wasn't just the Department of Justice that the President referenced in his statement on purpose, right? Because the Department of Health and Human Services has a range of resources, funding, programs that they can look at and potentially deploy. And yes, it is urgent. The President wants them to look at these programs now and come back and see what's possible, but it has been less than a day here, and I just want the experts and the policy experts to be able to assess what's possible, and then we will get back to you and make sure you all know exactly what our options look like. Go ahead.
Thanks so much. There are some concerns about the recent drone strikes and the possibility of more. some groups like the ACLU, as well as some former Obama officials, feel this is an indicator that the forever wars are not over if drone strikes continue. Can you address those concerns and speak to whether these drone strikes mean an extension of the war?
The strikes that killed ISIS-K terrorists?
And the possibility of more. President Biden yesterday said that this is not over.
Well, if anybody wants to convey they don't think that we should kill ISIS-K terrorists and kill the people who killed 13 members of our military, then the president's happy to have that debate. Go ahead.
Can I ask another question on refugees? Thank you. Some groups are anticipating about 50,000 Afghans coming to the United States. Is that an estimate that you're able to confirm? And is there anything more that you can share on what status they will arrive? Will most of them have humanitarian parole, SIVs, P1, P2s? And how will those numbers be applied to the refugee cap? Will they be part of the 125,000 that's been committed to, or in addition?
These are all really good questions that are being discussed by the team as we speak. But let me try to answer what I can answer at this point in time. So right now, the U.S. military bases, they confirmed about 2 days ago that they had about 20,000 people. That number may have gone down now, so I would certainly encourage you to ask them for an updated number if that's of interest. They are working towards space for about 50,000. Now, there are people who come to this country, American citizens and others, who have family members who may not go to those military bases, U.S. citizens, of course, who may not go to those bases, and those bases are meant to be temporary regardless. In terms of what classification, so as you know, there are different classifications people have come into the country under from Afghanistan. The SIV, the Special Immigrant Visa Program, P1, P2 programs. Some have come in through parolee programs. And yes, we are having discussions about over the long term what this looks like. Right now, refugees who come in as refugee status would be under the refugee cap, but beyond that, I have to let the policy process see itself through. It's a good question. Go ahead.
125,000, do you know that? I apologize.
Oh, sorry, about whether, say that one more time. What was the question about that?
125,000. Will it be in addition to the committed refugee cap of 125,000? Or will it be, does the 50,000, or whatever the number is, does it fall?
Well, 50,000, a lot of those people are special immigrant visa applicants, right? Or through other programs. So that wouldn't be under a refugee cap. Go ahead.
Reproductive rights activists have noted that President Biden seems reluctant to use the specific word abortion, although he did use it in his statement today and the statement you put out yesterday. Can you explain his seeming reluctance to use that word, and was it a deliberate messaging strategy or choice to use it this week in relation to the Texas law?
I have to say, as somebody who strongly supports women's rights to choose myself, as somebody who's spent time working with groups like Planned Parenthood, amazing groups like that I think the most important value people should look at is what the president does in his actions and what he fights for. And I don't think I'm going to have any other assessment beyond that. Go ahead.
The president said today, talking about the hurricane, that the climate crisis is here, and then he went on to talk about the wildfires and the flooding. Has anything in the recent, that recent string of weather events changed his view on how aggressive the administration needs to be on carbon reduction in its policies?
Well, I think it's reaffirmed, as you heard the president reference today, his commitment to getting his Build Back Better agenda passed, which has a huge focus on addressing the climate crisis and taking a number of steps, including creating more, investing in resiliency for infrastructure, as you know, also setting ambitious goals and taking policy steps to reach those. So I think it really reaffirms more the policies he's already proposed that will take huge steps forward in helping to address the climate crisis. I'd note that also even Senator Cassidy also noted the need to invest in infrastructure and how these recent events reiterate that.
On the Build Back Better, would the president sign a version of that passed by the House and Senate that does not fully fund his carbon reduction agenda?
Well, I'm not going to negotiate from here, obviously, but the president put those proposals in the package because he feels they are vitally important to addressing the climate crisis. And the climate crisis is one of 4 crises he's identified from the beginning as being central to the issues he's going to address as president. I will say that, as people look to the next couple of weeks of the very expansive legislative agenda that we are going to all be undertaking together, what the president is quite focused on is, yes, of course, the investments that will help cut costs for the American people in a range of ways, whether it's the child tax credit, making childcare less expensive, making college more affordable, but he is equally as focused on the making wealthiest Americans and corporations pay more, because he thinks that's fair, and he thinks that is how we can deliver on equality in this country, and that can also pay for a lot of these important policy initiatives. Go ahead.
Are there any more details about the president's trip to Louisiana tomorrow?
Sure. They are still being finalized, which is not out of the norm, but let me tell you what I know at this point in time. So the president will travel to New Orleans to survey storm damage from the hurricane. He'll meet with state and local leaders. I would expect that will include the governor and the mayor from impacted communities. And beyond that, we're still finalizing all the details, which we'll hopefully have more later tonight on.
And on the Texas abortion law, how worried, or is the administration worried at all that this will enable other state legislatures to pass similar bills?
Of course we're worried. Of course we're worried that other states where there is a movement and an effort to prevent women from having access to health care will copycat these steps by the Texas that happened in Texas.
Is that not a crystal ball question?
Thinks it's so urgent, and why he has asked his team to act as quickly as possible to see what our options are. Go ahead.
On Afghanistan, the Taliban says China will be their main partner and kind of financial lifeline. Does that weaken America's leverage over the group to change its behavior, especially given the geographic closeness between China and Afghanistan?
Well, I would first say that, as the president has said many times, so let me repeat, there are a few countries that wanted us to stay in Afghanistan more than China and Russia, because it would have tied up our own resources and tied up our own U.S. military and tied up our own financial assets and options. What our leverage over the Taliban is a range of things. I mean, one is, of course, access to the global marketplace, which is not just China. It is a range of money that is in the New York Federal Reserve that was the Afghan government's money that they currently don't have access to. It is working with a coalition of 100 countries around the world that have signed this statement on what their expectations are of the Taliban. It's working with the UN Security Council. So the world is united in what they expect the Taliban to do, which is allow people who want to depart the country to depart. And China has to decide where they are in that effort. Oh, good.
Just to the eviction moratorium, or lack thereof of an eviction moratorium, I'm curious what specifically the administration is doing to help those states who seem to be having issues doling out these billions of dollars available for renters and landlords beyond the, telling them to speed it up.
Well, I promise you we're not just telling them to speed it up. We are telling them to speed it up, but we are not stopping there. One of the steps we've taken, we've announced a few steps over the course of the last few weeks, is working to cut bureaucratic red tape from here. So that includes making it easier for landlords and tenants to apply for this assistance, and ensuring that that is not an incredibly difficult process. We've also worked with individual states to determine what are the holdup in their processes, and some of the bureaucratic steps in places where we've eased the red tape has expedited the funding going out in states. So we've seen successes on that front. What's important to note here is that the funding exists in states across the country to essentially do the federal eviction moratorium, even though the Supreme Court has ruled as they ruled, because states can do it on an individual basis. So what we're really encouraging states to do is put in place eviction moratoriums statewide, or take any steps they can take across the state to make it harder for people to kick tenants out of their homes during this time. And we can get you a rundown of that too. I'm looking for all the pieces. Go ahead.
A Taliban spokesman told an Australian news network that the 41 Australians who died in the war in Afghanistan died in May. During this time, the Australian government found out about the withdrawal date change through media reporting. We weren't included on the list from Secretary of State Antony Blinken of countries called on the final day, August 31. Does the Taliban have a point?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
We have sacrificed a lot for this alliance, and including the lives of 41 Australians, and we've been left seemingly out of the loop during this withdrawal process. There hasn't been high-level communication with the Australian government during this time.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that we have not engaged with the Australian government. We have worked with our partners around the world to evacuate individuals from a range of countries around the world who need evacuating from the country.
Yeah, but you can't prove that.
Say if you were standing here, those 41 Australians did not die in vain. And we are incredibly grateful for their partnership. We're incredibly grateful for their support over the course of a 20-year war. And Australia remains a pivotal partner to the United States. But I would be very shocked if we had not been in touch with and engaged with. So what I was asking you for clarification on was question about the 31st and a call on the 31st. I'm not sure what that would be a reference to.
The speech that Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, gave at the withdrawal, at the end of the conflict, the last fight, he listed through all these different countries that he called at the end of that, and Australia wasn't on the list.
I can certainly ask the State Department when their most recent diplomatic conversations were with Australian leaders, but I know that we are in close touch, in close coordination, and that Australia is an incredibly vital partner, not just over the last several years in the war in Afghanistan, but on a range of important global issues. Go ahead.
Thanks, John. I wanted to follow up on Jeff's question. We know that commission is not tasked with providing specific recommendations to the president out of that review, and he's already said that he is not a fan of court packing. So realistically, what kind of changes can we expect to come once that review is complete? Is the president committed to addressing the court system in a significant way?
Well, the president wants to take a look at what the court reform group advises on. And yes, they're not coming out with these are the 7 steps that we are recommending. It's a diverse group with diverse opinions. And he felt that was important given this is a vital institution in our nation's history. So I can't predict for you. I don't know where he's going to land. I'm going to leave the space for the president to determine that. Go ahead in the back.
A couple of follow-ups. First one is about the answer that you gave to Franco about the ongoing sort of drone strikes in Afghanistan. Because the president talked about in his recent remarks that this was kind of a new chapter, and you've talked from the podium there about sort of meeting these threats now where they are outside of Afghanistan. So if these drone strikes do continue, the concern from the international community is these are like extrajudicial killings, there are civilian casualties often. I mean, how is this sort of the new era? It seems almost like business as usual.
Well, I think it's the context of the president's remarks was not drone strikes are the new era. It is we need to meet threats where they are and ensure we're taking steps to address them in coordination with the global community, of course. I will say that the United States takes the threat of civilian casualties incredibly seriously. We do everything we can to prevent civilian casualties. That will continue. I know there have been very good questions about the strike that happened over the weekend, and there is an investigation into that. There's been a range of reporting, but the investigation needs to play out and conclude before we speak to that. But I would say what the president is referencing is there are a range of countries around the world where we don't have a military presence on the ground, but we can still prevent terrorist groups from metastasizing and posing threats to not just the United States, but to our partners and countries around the world. And there's a range of tools and tactics. So that's what he was conveying.
Just one more,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, apologies. One more follow-up.
Sure.
Steve Holland's question this time. You kind of updated us on how you're sort of encouraging the international leaders to get the money flowing into Afghanistan again. And as these aid groups are warning of a humanitarian crisis, given the fact, and this is again referencing the president's remarks, he's $2 trillion spent there. What's being done to ensure that all this money that's spent, whether it was in the past or in the future, is actually getting to the people that need it, and not to corporations that have profited off of people's misery for so long?
Absolutely. One, I would say he signed this OFAC license because he wants humanitarian groups that we know we can rely on to be able to have access to provide this assistance. And that was a step we took to ensure that. one of the pieces we've talked about a bit in here is the importance of getting airports functioning, right? Not just at HKIA, but in regional airports, because that's how this humanitarian assistance is going to be delivered to people across Afghanistan. So that's another area where he's quite focused, and the Secretary of State and our government is quite focused.
Two more foreign questions. First of all, in Afghanistan, what is the administration's position on the National Resistance Front led by Ahmad Massoud? And is the U.S. talking to or assisting them in, or in any way supporting them in reaching their goals?
I don't have anything to read out in terms of engagements with them. I'd point you to the State Department.
Secondly, as you know, climate envoy Kerry is in China right now to talk about climate change. Chinese foreign minister has said, quote, if the U.S. wants progress on climate, forgive me, sorry, quote starts here, stop regarding China as a threat and as an adversary. End quote. Does the administration see China as an adversary in this regard, and are you willing to meet them in the middle to make progress on climate change?
Well, the United States sees China as a country where we have disagreements, and we also have areas where we can work together. And that's what complicated diplomatic relationships look like, and certainly our relationship with China falls into that category. Thanks, everyone, so much.
Run away before they see you cry.
I don't think I'm going to have anything new to what I already answered on that, but we'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good trip.
Thank you.
Well, what is up, everyone? So it looks like in 5 minutes, the C-19 press briefing is going to start. So we're just going to keep it rolling. Psaki, she seemed really in her feelings with all these questions about what's going on in Texas and, you know, all the abortion stuff and all of that. I don't know if I could say that on YouTube or not, but whatever, we'll risk it. Yeah, she seemed pretty close to the subject. Anytime someone said something about it, she got all snarky and abrasive. I don't know. She felt some type of way about it. She had a hard time answering those questions. We will see what's going on. I'll have to flip the screen, so just give me a second. Yeah, she's gonna cry. She's gonna get in that back room and start crying. I thought she was gonna have a breakdown right there. I don't know who would feel bad. I really don't. She's such a liar, but you know. All right. Well, it says we got about 4 minutes until they start. They're usually on time with this because, you know, it's a board of liars all digitally sitting there. So they're usually right on time. But before it starts, please take a second to hit that like button. The more likes that we get in a short period of time, the more people the algorithm will bring into the chat to come hang out with us and see what's going on. So please hit that like button. My apologies for not being live on Odyssey and Rumble right now. It is a pain to get those up and running, and I was already a few moments late with the live as it was. If we would have messed around and tried to get that stuff going, we wouldn't have even seen that first lady speaking, who kind of seems out of nowhere. It's kind of like a red flag. She comes out of nowhere. I can't remember who she said she was as far as a position, but she wanted to let everybody know because the White House wants to raise awareness of cyber attacks, and she wants everyone to change their passwords and do 2, 3, 4 step fucking entry and stuff like that. Very strange. They say they weren't expecting a threat. They haven't had an attack, but they want everyone to be aware of cyber attacks. Kind of strange. But we would have missed it. I don't know why Rumble and Odyssey's like that. It's not just the fact that I have to re-enter all the information from scratch every single live, but the loading screens kill me. Waiting for them to process, their servers to process all the data, that's what takes so long. So unfortunately, that's why we're not live on those platforms right now. I will get that set up for the next live. I ran out of time between what I was doing and going live. I basically got home, threw all my stuff on the floor, sat down, went live. I just did not have time to set that stuff up, so my apologies. All right, looks like they're about to get started. One moment. What's up, everyone on Twitch? There's always like a ton of conversation going on there now. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on you guys just in case I have to put on the slow chat. I think it automatically does slow chat for like 5 seconds, but I can turn it up if we ever get too out of control. What's up, everyone on Facebook? I don't know if my Facebook numbers are wrong, but it always says that we have 4 people watching every time. Strange. It's strange. It's always 4 people watching. It just, well, last night I guess there was quite a few watching for the school board meeting, where the parents were airing their feelings about the Antifa teacher, and the school board members ran out the back door and ran away. And as far as I know, Oreo Express didn't go live again, so they must not have pursued the board members last night, at least not that I know of. I stayed awake to see if that was going to happen, but I didn't see any notifications. Also, for those of you that are not a part of the Discord, the young man that spoke at the board meeting last night, I am pretty sure he was in the Discord last night. Big shout out to him if he's watching. Actually, I got some shout outs from PayPal and Cash App to do from yesterday because I missed it before I shut down the live. Also, we got some for today. Thank you so much, RV, Sarah, and Pat, for your donations and your support. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, Daniel, for thank you so much, Daniel, for your donation and your support through Cash App. I really appreciate you. I gotta find these other names really quick. Thank you so much, LJ Jones. If you're watching, thank you so much for your donation and support through Cash App. You're awesome. What's up, USA Forever? Thank you so much, Sims, James, and Michael, for your donations and your support through PayPal. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. What's up, Wyoming Adventure? Thank you for being here. Yeah, I'm glad that we can all be together to see what's actually going on around us. If it wasn't for live streamers and and broadcasters, we wouldn't even know. We'd be sitting here believing the crap we hear at the White House. It's no good. I think about it all the time. Where would we be if we didn't have other sources of information? Well, we'd be right where they want us. We might be and not even know it. Yeah, Chris, I agree. Every day is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. It just doesn't seem like it's getting any better, unfortunately. Hey, what's up, Bobby? Yes, I do have PayPal. The link is in the description. It's on my link tree. Actually, I might be able to pop it in the chat here in a second. Jeff Downhauser, yes. I'm sure things in the past, sure there was things really bad going on in the past before the internet and all of that brought us all together, and, you know, so much information at our fingertips. I'm sure there was terrible things happening that people will never know. Hey, I appreciate you, Status Quo. Well, if that's how you feel, Jack, you're banned. Sorry you're trying to call me out on my stuff. Obviously, you're new here and you've lost your privileges to speak in my house. And your mom is a hoe. And get some Jay. Yeah. Me and everyone I talk to in real life feel the same way as well here in Michigan. The path ahead seems dark. Hopefully we're wrong. Hopefully something happens and change occurs for the better. But at this point, unfortunately, it does not seem that way. All right, I just put those donation links in. I'm also going to put in the Discord link. You guys should really join the Discord. If you join the Discord, you will never miss a notification for when and where we go live. Plus, there is always, at this point, there is always 24/7 great conversation happening. Just information pouring in, people networking and connecting to each other, and it's awesome. So even if you don't want to be a part of the general conversation, at least join the Discord so you never miss a notification for when and where we go live. Like for people who are only subscribed through Odyssey and Rumble, which there's not many, they wouldn't even know we're live right now without Discord.
Drs. Walensky and Fauci after a brief update. We know more vaccinations are the way to end the pandemic. And
thank you so much, Holly, for your donation and support. I appreciate you.
Vaccinations. Importantly, as of today, 175 million people have been fully vaccinated, up over 10 million from just a month ago. 175 million fully vaccinated Americans. That's a major milestone in our vaccination effort. We are laser focused on getting more Americans vaccinated. At the same time, we're doing everything we can to help vaccinate the world. It's the right thing to do. This virus knows no borders, and stamping out the virus everywhere protects our health and our economy here at home. That's why we've already committed to sharing over 600 million doses globally, far and away the largest contribution made by any country. And in just the past 10 days, we've shipped millions of doses internationally, including to Mexico, Vietnam, Honduras, South Africa, and the Philippines. In total, we've now shipped over 130 million doses to 90 countries. According to the UN, the United States has donated more doses than all other countries in the world combined. We can and we will do even more. And to that end, an important part of our efforts is increasing vaccine manufacturing capacity here at home and in other countries around the world. Increasing vaccine manufacturing requires investing across the whole supply chain, from lipids to bioreactor bags to vials to syringes. Over the past several months, we've done exactly that. Thanks to the actions we've taken, including the President's use of the Defense Production Act, we have significantly accelerated production of critical vaccine manufacturing equipment, inputs, and supplies. And we've expanded fill finish lines at factories so we can get vaccine doses into vials faster and at a larger scale. These actions have paid off as American companies have significantly increased their capacity to produce vaccines for the US and for the world, including those 500 million doses of Pfizer we have pledged to purchase and donate to the lowest income countries in the world. Today, we're taking another step to expand US manufacturing of critical vaccine inputs, a nearly $3 billion investment in the vaccine supply chain. This funding, which will start going out in the coming weeks, will enable companies that manufacture and produce vaccine inputs to add new production lines and facilities, and to also expand fill-finish capacity. This $3 billion investment in our vaccine supply chain will create thousands of good-paying American jobs, help us deliver on the President's commitment to be the arsenal of vaccines for the world, and strengthen our long-term capabilities to respond to future threats. I want to close with this thought. We're doing everything in our power to ensure everyone, both here at home and around the world, has access to vaccines. Because more vaccinations are how we end this pandemic. So if you are unvaccinated, our message is simple. Don't wait any longer. Do your part. Visit vaccines.gov or text your zip code to 438-829 to find a site near you. And please, please go get vaccinated today. With that, over to Dr. Walensky.
Thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon.
No.
Let's begin with an overview of the data. Our 7-day average is about 149,000 cases per day, and the 7-day average of hospital admissions is about 12,000 per day. Our 7-day average of daily deaths has increased to 953 per day. Today, I want to focus on COVID-19 and children, and importantly, what we can do to protect them. As a mother of 3 and as a physician, I deeply care about keeping our children safe at home and at school. Tomorrow, CDC will publish 2 new studies in the MMWR that specifically look at COVID-19 and children. These studies compare pediatric cases, emergency room visits, and hospitalizations during the prior winter surge, when vaccination rates were low, with this summer, when adult and adolescent vaccination coverage is increased and the Delta variant is the dominant variant. Both studies, one thing is clear. Cases, emergency room visits, and hospitalizations are much lower among children in communities with higher vaccination rates. Vaccination works. The first study analyzed data from hospitals in 99 counties across 14 states and found that the hospitalization rate among unvaccinated adolescents, those aged 12 to 17, was nearly 10 times higher than that among fully vaccinated adolescents during the month of July. The second study looked at national cases, emergency room visits, and hospitalizations, and found that in August 2021, the rate of hospitalization for children was nearly 4 times higher in states with the lowest overall vaccination coverage when compared to states with high overall vaccination coverage. Both of these studies included data from the past 2 months when the Delta variant became the predominant variant across the country. As cases were increasing throughout July and August, the number of children getting sick with COVID was also increasing. From late June and to mid-August, in the context of low community vaccination coverage and the rapid spread of the Delta variant, cases for children and adolescents 17 and under increased by nearly 10-fold, which aligns with the increase seen for the general population. And although we are seeing more cases in children and more overall cases, these studies demonstrated that there was not increased disease severity in children. Instead, more children have COVID-19 because there is more disease in the community. What is clear from these data is community-level vaccination coverage protects our children. As the number of COVID-19 cases increase in the community, the number of children getting sick, presenting to the emergency room, and being admitted to the hospital will also increase. I want to emphasize 3 important points to protect our children. First, we must continue to vaccinate all of those who are eligible to protect our younger children from disease. Communities with high vaccination coverage are seeing lower pediatric cases and hospitalizations. Second, wearing a mask in public indoor settings and continuing to practice the prevention strategies we know work are important to prevent further increases in cases and hospitalizations, especially for those children too young for the currently available vaccines. And third, with case rates in children high, it is important for schools to follow CDC guidance and ensure that all students, teachers, staff, and visitors to schools wear masks and that there are additional layers of protection in school. We know what we need to do to protect our children. Get vaccinated, wear masks, and follow CDC guidance. We must come together to ensure that our children, indeed our future, remain safe and healthy during this time. Thank you. I'll turn things over to Dr. Fauci.
Thank you very much, Dr. Walensky. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes now going over recent data from Israel supporting the rationale for COVID-19 booster shots. So on the next slide, we see new PCR positive infections and new severe COVID cases in fully vaccinated people during the Delta wave in Israel from June 1st up to, in this case, August the 1st. So clearly, Delta is dominant and is responsible for new cases, including severe disease. Next slide. However, in a study that began 2 days before the August 1st deadline I showed you on the prior slide, a study of a third booster of the Pfizer vaccine was approved for individuals 60 or older, and 1.1 million who were eligible for the dose got it between July 30th and August the 22nd. And a rather substantial positive impact was seen. 12 days or more after the booster dose, there was a greater than 10-fold diminution in the relative risk of both confirmed infection and severe disease. And in this paper by Baron et al., on the next slide, the individual data are shown. So if you go from left to right, the bottom dotted line is the dashed line represented no additional protection. On the vertical axis is the fold reduction in risk of 3 doses compared to 2 doses. So the numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, that would be 7-fold reduction in risk or 9-fold reduction in risk. And if you eliminate the 1 and the 2, which is probably bias there, psychological bias, and look at what happens from day 3, 4, 5, 6, and on. When you get to day 12, you see a substantial diminution in risk of infection. And in fact, that represents here about 1 million individuals who received their third dose. And if you look all the way on the right, you see about a 10, 11, or 12% reduction. Next slide. Looking at it in another way, in a different study, when you looked at the reduction in the odds of testing positive comparing 2 doses versus 3 doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And in this study, in a 1 HMO in Israel, the Maccabi Healthcare Services, looking at more than 150,000 people in the first 3 weeks of August, they compared the 2-dose with the 3-dose, and they found after 7 to 13 days, up to 68% reduction in the risk of infection. And after 14 to 20 days, a 70 to 84% reduction in the risk of infection. There's no doubt from the dramatic data from the Israeli study that the boosts that are being now done there and contemplated here support very strongly the rationale associated with boost. I'll stop there and back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, doctors. Why don't we open it up for a few questions? First question.
We'll go to Tamara Keith at NPR.
Thank you. Little delay in the unmuting. Two quick questions. Is there any thought of doing a meeting connected to the UN General Assembly to try to encourage other countries to sort of amp up their vaccine donations globally? And then I know there's been some question about whether the FDA approval, full approval of the Pfizer vaccine has actually had a measurable impact on people getting their first doses. And I'm wondering if you have any new or additional data on that.
Dr. Walensky on the second question, and then I'll come back to Unga.
Yeah, that's a great question. We are seeing an uptick in vaccinations generally, as Jeff has mentioned. We're seeing now vaccination rates of around 900,000, 1 million a day, and vaccination rates of first doses that are about half that. So all of that is really good news. Can we directly attribute it to the FDA approval? I do think it has motivated some, but a lot of other things are happening at the same time with regard to disease and people's concern about that. So I think that definitely had some impact. Whether it's solely the only reason that the vaccine numbers are going up, I think is hard to say.
Yeah, I think on Unga, given the significance of COVID around the world, it's clearly going to be a topic of discussion at the UN. Next question, please.
We'll go to Cheryl Stolberg at the New York Times.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I have two questions. First, for Dr. Walensky, state health officials had a call earlier today, and they proclaimed the United States a hot zone into itself. They said the entire country was a hot zone, and I wonder if you agree with that. And then separately for Jeff, can you talk a little bit more about the $3 billion investment? What companies are involved? How many doses will be produced over what time period, and where will they go? Is this exclusively for global donations? How will that work?
Dr. Walensky?
So to start, the important thing that I will say is where we have more vaccination, we have less disease. That's very clear. Certainly the Delta variant is more transmissible, but in areas of the country where we have less vaccination, we absolutely have seen less disease. So there's a lot of disease going on right now, but the way out of that is vaccination.
So Cheryl, we've, as we've talked about across the last 6 months, we've seen a significant increase in
Where's the proof of that?
fill finish factories here in the U.S. The investments we're making with the $3 billion are in U.S. companies. However, that will expand their capacity for critical supplies, things like lipids, bioreactor bags, tubing, needles, syringes, new plants for rubber and protective gloves. So we're also looking at PPE. The specific companies have not been chosen. That'll be done through the contracting process, which will start across the next several weeks. Next question, please.
Go to John Cohen at Science Magazine.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I just want to follow up on the question of boosters and the impact that the U.S. government decision might have on other countries. Obviously, the U.S. government is donating a tremendous amount, but there's a concern that other countries are going to use boosters widely, following the lead of the United States, and are not going to be donating much of anything. Do you have any concern that the U.S. government is sending a message to other countries that will widely use boosters, even in groups younger than 60, and not be increasing donations at all?
Dr. Fauci?
Well, John, I would hope that the countries that are boosting their populations similar to what we are understand the importance of the global necessity to essentially suppress this at a global level. And that's the reason why the United States is setting the example. As Jeff had mentioned, we have given 130 million doses to 90 countries. We will be giving 200 million before the end of the year and another 300 million by June of 2022. And we will continue to help increase the capacity of companies to be able to produce doses for the rest of the world. So I understand your concern, but I hope that the example that the United States is showing will in fact be followed by other developed nations that do have the capability and the resources to contribute to the doses for the rest of the world.
I think that captures it well. I think what we can do both. We can protect the American people and contribute to the world as we are leading.
Fauci's looking sick. Maybe he should get a jab or two.
Doses donated. And to go back to Cheryl's previous question, the investments we're making, the $3 billion, will expand U.S. manufacturing, both for doses here in the U.S. and to give to the world and export to the world. Next question.
We'll go to Zeke Miller at the AP.
Thanks for doing this. Regarding, maybe that's for Dr. Fauci, you mentioned the studies in Israel. We've seen the Israeli government require people to get a third dose of the vaccine to be considered fully vaccinated. Do you expect a similar change in the United States, that that a third dose after that 8-month waiting period will be required to be quote unquote considered fully vaccinated and enjoy the privileges of the freedoms that provides? And then sort of a broader question, and maybe for Jeff, should we expect the same level of national campaign to give people that third dose of those 2-dose vaccines? We saw so much over the last year, reminding people that just 1 dose of those shots wasn't enough. You need the second. Should we expect sort of the same level of engagement to encourage people to get the third?
He just said the freedoms you can enjoy
regarding your
if you get it.
Question, the determination whether something is now constitute fully vaccinated, I will leave that up to the FDA when they get the data on the 3 doses to make that a determination, and then ultimately a recommendation from the ACIP to the CDC so that it's recommended. But I must say, from my own experience as an immunologist, I would not at all be surprised that the adequate full regimen for vaccination will likely be 3 doses. And the reason I say that is that it's very clear when you give a prime and maybe a second shot as a boost, but give the immune system enough chance to mature in both affinity maturation and maturation of the B cell repertoire, it is entirely understandable why the results that I just reported from the Israeli boosters are so dramatic. And we all hope, and I believe we have good reason to believe, that that only will not be a strong response, but that it will actually be durable. And if it is durable, then you're going to have very likely a 3-dose regimen being the routine regimen. But we'll just have to wait to make sure that that's the case when the data get presented to the FDA.
And Zeke, on your question about the national campaign, working with our partners at the state and local level, the federal pharmacy, that intensity of the operation to get people their first dose, their second dose, and there still are tens of millions of people who haven't started their vaccination regimen, and you know how important that is, and we talk about it all the time. Same as Dr. Fauci just said, once the FDA and ACIP make their recommendations on boosters, that same intensity of operations and coordination and partnership will be applied to the booster campaign. Next question.
Our last question will go to Carl O'Donnell at Reuters.
Hi, thanks so much for taking my question. So I wanted to ask about the new variant of concern identified on Tuesday by the WHO, the Mu variant, MU, which some people are saying is less or is more resistant to vaccines than other variants so far. And just want to see if that's something that you guys are concerned about, if you have any plans should that start to spread in the U.S., and whether you think that by getting booster shots out there that it reduces the risk.
Dr. Fauci?
Thank you.
Well, yes, we certainly are aware of the Mu variant. We're keeping a very close eye on it. It is really seen here, but it is not at all even close to being dominant. As you know, the Delta is more than 99% dominant. Even though it is not in essence taken hold to any extent here, we always pay attention to at all times variants. This variant has a constellation of mutations that suggests that it would evade certain antibodies, not only monoclonal antibodies, but vaccine and convalescent serum-induced antibodies. But there isn't a lot of clinical data to suggest that. It is mostly laboratory in vitro data. Not to downplay it, we take it very seriously. But remember, even when you have variants that do diminish somewhat the efficacy of the vaccines still are quite effective against variants of that type. Bottom line, we're paying attention to it. We take everything like that seriously, but we don't consider it an immediate threat right now.
Dr. Walensky, anything to add there?
Nothing to add. We are watching it carefully.
Last night was the first time I heard of that variant, the mu variant.
Over 99% of
How many will there be?
right now are Delta.
Good. Well, thank you for today's briefing. We'll look forward to seeing you early next week. Thank you.
All right. More lying and crying. Just a moment. Yep. They're going to have everybody with their jab card, and once you fill it up, you get a free coffee or something like that. I don't know. Who knows? Well, that's all the lying and crying from Washington, D.C. that we have scheduled for today. It's Thursday, so it's a good chance there will be activity going on. Maybe we'll find some more board meetings. Maybe, there'll be some civil unrest. It's hard to say, but usually Thursday, Friday, pretty busy. Yeah, if anybody knows of anything going on, definitely post it in the Discord so we can put it on the schedule. Please follow or subscribe on whatever platform you are currently watching to stay connected and to also help the platform grow, to get new viewers to come check out what's actually happening around us. Please join the Discord. It is so worth it. It is so worth it. You will always receive a notification for when and where we go live. There's also great conversation going on 24 hours a day, as well as information pouring in from all directions about all parts of the world. Anything from documents to people personally experiencing stuff to video footage to everything. We're constantly, it's at the point where I have a news feed, but I'm going to have to start categorizing the news feed because there's so much news coming in that just in the day, just that day's worth of news, you could read articles all day. You could just keep scrolling and read articles all day about everything going on around us. It's insane. All of us there, all like 3,300 of us in the Discord, are constantly researching and looking for information and discussing our findings, as well as helping each other deal with what's going on around us. As I had mentioned yesterday, mental health is very important. You have to consider unplugging at least once a day, especially like what I do, where I'm doing this all day. Between being live, I'm reading and researching and watching stuff and and discussing things with hooligans, and at night I have to actually take time to stay awake, to watch TV, to play the game, to do something to take my mind off of it, because otherwise you will burn out. You will burn out, and you will see others burn out. When you see someone that you've had conversation with for the last month, 2 months, 3 months about this kind of stuff, and all of a sudden they become argumentative, aggressive towards people who are supposed to be their friends, people that they normally converse with, they're unraveling. They're about to have a breakdown. They're about to burn out. It is very real. That stuff is very real. I've seen it in the Discord many times with people who never leave the Discord, who are there researching information 24 hours a day, and then after so long, you'll see them become having conflict with everyone. It is very real. That stuff is very real. Being aware of what's going on around you, I don't want to say it's addicting, but it's the safest you can be. It is the safest you can be. So for a lot of people, especially who are new to it, just seeing what's going on, like maybe they just had their eyes opened, it's hard for them to realize they have to unplug. You have to do it every day, because you will burn out. You will just spiral out of control and burn out. And doing that can cause you to burn bridges. It can cause you to have a gap where you're not staying up to date with what's going on, which in certain situations could be dangerous. So always remember to unplug for a little bit of time each day to make sure you do not burn out. It is necessary. Do it as you need. Don't let people around you tell you what you're supposed to do. I know I just offered some advice, but again, I'm not telling you what to do, say, think, or feel. It's just my suggestion as somebody who has burned out 4 or 5 times over the 1.5, 2 years I've been doing this. I highly recommend it. You can burn bridges and you can come back a month later and be like, hey, I slept for 3 weeks. I feel better now. I'm really sorry that I was ripping your head off because you were caring about my health. And they're like, I don't care anymore. It is very real. William, why you telling on me? Yeah, I used to be shirtless on my streams. Now you gotta just deal with my words and stop looking at me like a piece of meat. No, but yeah, mental health is very real. Definitely protect yourself. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate all of you. I know I got some more shout outs here. Thank you so much, Doris and RV Sarah, for your donations and your support. And thank you, Keena, for joining the membership program, and welcome to the family. You're officially a hooligan. And I think I got one more on PayPal. I'm trying to do better on doing shout outs on PayPal. I don't have it on my screen. It's on my phone. That's what messes me up. Thank you so much, Robert, for your donation, your support. I really appreciate you. So thank you guys for being here. You guys are super awesome. I am working on those new shirt designs. I'm kind of conflicted on whether or not it's going to go on the new merch store, or if I'm just going to put it up on the merch store we already got. Either way, I got to get that stuff out there because we need those Pro 2A shirts stat. I need some new shirts anyways. So I will make sure to continue on getting that put out. I'm going to keep my eyes open for anything going on today. I'm sure my hooligans that are already in the Discord are out there searching for what's happening in their local area as well as what's happening across the country. I'm sure we'll go live again today with some sort of activity. It's Thursday and people are riled up. There's more people realizing what's going on than this whole plague. So as you seen with the parents last night, people are sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I'm sure we'll have something going on. I will see you guys later. Thank you so much for being here. And until the next live, stand tall, shine bright, and that's a wrap.